Welcome to the final word on Satan. This is the audio lecture on Satan. We've covered Satanism, black magic, etc. But I want to define exactly who this entity in modern times is considered and how it's been changed by the Black Lodge, Illuminati, New World Order, who like to call themselves, instead of Satanists, they like to call themselves Luciferians. Just had a nice word, that is, Luciferian. So it sounds like a dream to a fairyland. And of course their definition of Satan comes right out of a fairy tale. I'm a little tired of hearing the New Age, born-again black magicians quoting the fairy tale. That is the disinformation that the Illuminati is known for. And disinformation in itself is something you have to be aware of. And the way disinformation works, just to clarify it quickly here, because like everything, that's a whole discussion unto itself. It's also something to be very familiar with. But to sum it up quickly, disinformation is telling you the exact same story of giving you both sides of it. Giving you, it did happen, it didn't happen. In this case, Satan is evil, Satan is wonderful. He's Lucifer. He brings knowledge. So if they ever get caught, since they've said both things, they're never wrong, and I can always point to the time when they did it. A sneaky but effective trick. So to clarify exactly what happened in this whole story, and apparently people don't know it, and the New Age nonsense about this to fit into their little model, because they don't have the courage to state what they're really into, the deepest, darkest evil practices. They want to claim somebody, which typically of the inner orders of the Masons and so forth clumb onto the story of this helpful angel that wants to assist mankind. Just isn't the case. The case is that the earth plane and hell, after the earth was created, hell was sooner created after that, because of the evil angels in heaven who decided to rise up against God, basically because of the initial fact, similar to those in satanic movements who rise up against the leaders of that particular organization. God stated that he wanted the angels to actually work with mankind, to assist them, and even to be subservient to them to some degree. After all, they were angels and they were from God, and a man was made in their image, and they were to assist and help them as much as possible, to the point of they being inferior to mankind. And of course, this was highly objected by a large number of angels led by Lucifer, who would soon be called Satan. And Lucifer, the name Lightbringer, was when he was in his capacity as a positive angel that assisted mankind. So he was like all the angels were basically light bringers. They were helping mankind and bringing messages or information to mankind. Lucifer decided that this was not in the cards for him. He wanted to run heaven. He wanted to be in charge of everything, and he wanted mankind to worship him. Not that he in any way should help them. So he didn't want to do his job. He wanted to take over. He wanted to take over heaven. And really what he wanted to do was usurp God's position, because he wanted to be worshipped, going against the universal law. And that's what we talk about. It's not the fact that God wanted this worshiping. Somebody has to be in charge. Somebody has to follow the universal laws of right and wrong, and not just be there as to be worshipped and fawned over, as Lucifer wanted to do. So that's very important to understand that. So Lucifer, Satan, attacked God and tried to take over heaven and to kill the other angels. And God's archangel, Michael, destroyed the angels, destroyed, in the terminology of the West, the actual dragon. And Satan is considered the red dragon against the white dragon of Saint Michael. So that's an important little esoteric fact that we'll cover in other lectures as well. But the dragon symbol, which is a very positive symbol, of course, has been warped by the disinformation campaign by the Illuminati and the Black Lodge too. Of course, there's the adversary. There's the White Lodge, the Black Lodge, and some variations of that, meaning the actual Red Lodge, which has always represented Satan. So that's very important. So St. Michael kicked his ass and the rest of the angels, and they threw them out of heaven. So they threw them out of the Garden of Eden for angels, cast them down into the realm of earth, the realm of the physical, the realm of the limited. But for one reason or another, his powers were not taken away. God decided to use Satan as a tool to test mankind and to have more of a less perfect reality that no mistakes could be made in, and that there would be a free will aspect. So in many ways, God at this particular time just decided to support Satan. Because there's no good and evil if you have no choice. If everything is perfect and you just operate because, well, I don't have to steal because I'm rich, yet the rich steal all the time. It's called white-collar crime. It's called stock trading, cheating on your taxes, not paying people enough. This is all theft. Yet they really don't have to, but the temptation is there, and they can do it and get away with it for numerous reasons. So the idea is that why have a perfect world where that wouldn't even be possible? So in many ways, God found Satan to be an interesting tool, and having him thrown outside of heaven and not having to bother with him, being a beaten little slave that he is to God, all he can really do is create mischief. And that's exactly, of course, what he does. Well, let's get it 100% clear here. And while I've went over this in other lectures, this is very specifically on Satan. Satan was beaten and crushed and subdued by the archangel Michael and cast out. There's nothing powerful about him over God. Who won that war? These kind of convenient new age thinking that, well, this is just kind of the adversary. There's nothing really wrong with him, etc., of just basically he wanted to help mankind. Well, I don't know where that comes from, but that's another fantasy. Which, again, this disinformation of, yes, in his old angel position, he was assigned to and had to help mankind, but he rebelled against that for one policy reason or another. And because of that, and got so radical that he wanted to overthrow heaven and become God himself, that he had to be subdued along with the rest of the angels and cast out. So he wants to be worshipped, and he wants to manipulate. He's not there to help mankind anyway. They didn't come down to give you information to assist mankind, which is what they want to tell you. I mean, and this has gotten to such a serious point that even in the television series Ancient Aliens, which we recommend on our website as a place to get basic information, as with all media, it's starting points, it's not facts, so remember that. You've got to get both sides of the story, get complete information, but find out for yourself what the ultimate truth is. They did an entire hour on Satan and Lucifer and came up with the same common New Age philosophy about Satan, which goes back to quite quite many years. This has been a philosophical point of view that goes back some time, started by one of the main purveyors of this were some Gnostic Cathar sects. It was further carried into mainstream Western European thought by Otto Rand, who was working at that time for the Nazis, and came up with this whole book of how, these are actually nice guys, and these people just wanted to help. And this all comes from radical Cathar sects that rejected the hard life and started to embrace the physicality of the earth plane, which is against basic Cathar's understanding. The Cathars believe that the physical earth is evil and of Satan. But this all came out mostly perpetrated and used through Otto Rand, but it's an old belief system which has been propped up. It's interesting that that philosophy came out of the Nazis. Himmler then reprinted thousands of his books, even though he was a disgraced Nazi, and ultimately committed suicide after seeing the horrors of the death camps. So he was... Otto Rand is an interesting character, and he was basically a person who was a researcher, as bad as his research may have been. But his concepts were taken these aren't bad guys, and we're more kind of like that, and conveniently used by Himmler and the Illuminati to follow. So it's very important to understand that. How is Satan so powerful if God, what these black magicians and Satanists want to reject, beat his ass and threw him out of heaven? So it's contradictory to the fact that, obviously, if you have a problem with Satan, all you have to do is call on the Archangel Michael, and he's going to kick his ass. There's no controversy there. That's the book. And if you're going to use Satanism from the Bible and the Bible Judeo-Christian tradition, then you're going to have to go with the story that's in that book. So, as I've always said, Satanists are just reverse Christians. They do everything backwards, and Satan, of course, can portray himself in any way he wants to, and that's all part and parcel of doing it backwards or doing it against is traditionally what Satanists do, because they're doing backwards of the other belief systems. So it's a common practice. They would do masses backwards. Everything backwards is considered evil, just like left-hand path or left-hand spin is evil, right-hand spin is good. And in nature, if something spins in the right-hand direction or clockwise, it's a positive substance. And that goes just about 99 or 98% for everything. If a substance is toxic or poisonous, it spins in a counterclockwise direction if you're testing it radionically or using pendulums or just feeling the energy fields. So that's another fact, and that's even a scientific, physical fact other than these little stories. But of course, if you're going to sell something, you've got to use the sexy name of Satan. And let's get into the allegory of the tree of knowledge and the eating of the apple and the snake coming and so forth. This all has to do, again, these are allegories, these are mythology to teach to a bigger picture, to what exactly is meant, and to form a philosophical understanding. And you do that by having stories, because people can understand that. You talk about science or go into intellectual babble about these kind of subjects, and you're going to lose a lot of people, especially a lot of people that can't even read and write at the time of all this stuff was taught. Or even the simplistic born-again Christian mind you have today. Let's not complicate the issue with the facts. So basically the tree, which is considered the tree of knowledge, but again, that's a poor understanding of what it is. It's the tree of disinformation. It was the tree of negativity, doubt, and questioning of this perfect environment. So it was So once Satan was able to go in there and manipulate humans like they do today, who are more than happy to be manipulated most of the time. That's the problem. And form the lower reality, which snakes are generally thought of as negative in a lot of cultures, but not in a entirely. It's considered in Indian cultures and so forth as the Kundalini energy. But at the base, it's the base primitiveness, which would be the snake. Then the snake goes up or ascends, and by ascending, it's releasing the Kundalini into a higher aspect. So there's the base snake, and then there's the ascending snake that ultimately forms into the white dragon, which becomes the ascension process. So that was the tree of doubt, disinformation, and once that was brought into the mind of questioning and being doubting about the perfect reality, the Garden of Eden turned into the sewer of civilization, as there was nothing but uncooperation, doubts about everything, and nothing got done, similar to what you have in normal society, to drag this into a more of an allegoric situation. So it had nothing to do with man being made, taking from their stupid aspects into making them smart, giving them knowledge so they could be better. The world that Satan created after the Garden of Eden, because of this unjustifiable doubt, is a hell realm which he wanted it to be, so that he could rule, so he could get disillusioned people and talk in their ear like all religions do. They take the disillusioned and the stupid and they control them. Of course, one of the famous stories within in the Bible mythology is the story of Job. And of course, Job was tempted by the devil and almost gave up a belief in God and almost traitorred God after Satan tempted and harassed him for weeks after weeks to try and break him. And God allowed this as a test, and this pretty much symbolizes mankind from this point on. All of mankind is going to be tempted by Satan, this energy, this negative disinformation reality that is pushed on them, the trickster reality of Satan, who tells you one thing and does another, as a test of following the path. Because again, if there is no stress, then what value is the path? If everything is good, there is no evil. If everything is evil, then there is no good. The point is that how does all this this balance? You have to have this balance. You have to have this free will to make anything have value. And initially, throughout the Western tradition, Satan was seen to be directly connected with physical illnesses. I mean, it had to be blamed on someone. And of course, the bigger picture of it is once the disinformation tree apple was eaten and the Garden of Eden was lost, part of this was Satan having the power to inflict people with physical illnesses and diseases of all type, including basic sins and sinning or doing evil acts. This is then how Satan was thought of. And of course, we also see how Satan then tempted Jesus at the time that he was around, offering him all sorts of things to get him to go away from God and to question him. And this sort of gets into discussion of whether it's actually slavishly following a belief system, which of course a lot of people want to picture it as, to explain it as, when it has to be going along with universal law. It's not the fact of following slavishly what God tells you, but following a higher and better principle other than the base principles of lust and money. And it's interesting that Satan's shown as a person who gives you illnesses And one of the main ways that Jesus in the Bible is portrayed is he's portrayed as a healer. And he releases the evil energy from you, and that's the way that you are healed. So Satan and illness is directly connected. I don't see how that possibly is some sort of helper if he's diseasing people. So it's directly connected to causing diseases within humans. He's also been directly connected to possessing Judah to betray Jesus, something that is a common act now. And again, this is representative. This is the allegory of man's betrayal to other man's and their deceitful nature and embracing evil for money over the purity of the higher path, as people do today, because people are bought off. It's all about money. They don't really care what's right or wrong. You give them money, and they do whatever Satan tells them to do, or whatever the New World Order and the Illuminati does. It's all about money. They're all bought. And that's what that allegory is supposed to be about, is that people easily betrayed or become possessed by the evilness of Satan, motivated by just a small amount of money. Another excellent allegory story to teach about doing good tasks and living a proper life and what will happen to you when you do is the story of St. Anthony in the Bible. And St. Anthony in the Bible was doing great work, helping mankind, assisting them in every possible way. And of course, guess who took notice of that? Good old Satan, who wanted to help mankind so much, wanted to teach them. And here was a person who was helping and teaching mankind, and he wanted to make sure that stopped. Well, how did that other story come about? Where's the light bringer? So it's complete and total nonsense, or I should say the enlightenment bringer, because that's what people have claimed that means. Well, where is that? There's none of that in the basic stories. This whole belief system was invented as a disinformation campaign, that this was such a helpful spirit, when it's complete nonsense. So, at first, of course, just like most things in life, the harassment starts at a lower level, tempting him, of course, with sex and drugs. Then, and we hear of many cases of this, he was physically attacked, and gruesome monsters appeared to him, all trying to... So you've got the spiritual perversion with the sex and drugs. You've got the actual physical attacks to create fear. And then, of course, you have the mental attacks to create the ultimate fear. So he was attacked on every aspect of life. And this is what Satan did to stop someone who was assisting mankind and trying to do higher work. And again, this is just like most everything else. This is demonstrating how mankind, when you try and do good works, generally you're attacked. So, I mean, it's all there in these stories which have been passed on for thousands of years. Fact, but it certainly is not this positive entity that's helping God. First of all, let's go back to the beginning. He wanted to be worshipped by mankind. He wanted to be God. And being worshipped generally doesn't lead to getting assistance. And of course, as mankind becomes more and more corrupt, because after eating the disinformation fruit and finding out the reality of the world they had created through doubt and lack of cooperation and the lack of working for a higher cause, the world they were in now was collapsing upon them, with all sorts of evil taking place, created by man itself with a little help from Satan. and it infiltrated all manners of evil, I should say, infiltrated all manners of structure within the human reality, perverting it, particularly all the religious structures, perverting it and causing mass destructions. And the church, of course, came out saying, well, this was all Satan's work, and no one really cared very much or believed that. But the problem is, by doing that, it gave the impression that God was less powerful when it was basically it's man's free will. If God corrects everything that happens, then there is no free will and there is no consequences to pay. So we get back into this perfect lifestyle that is basically made easy for you. And then what is the point of a higher spiritual goal if everybody had 10 pounds of gold in their pocket, gold would not be worth anything. We then further go into, as there are more descriptions, for people who think that somehow Satan is wonderful, the description of hell and all the torments and all the things going on there. Certainly not a realm where anybody wants to live, in the actual realm where Satan lives. So here again, this has all been changed around to make things comfortable for the disinformation, New Age, born again, black magic Satanists. And of course, Satan's corruption continued more to annihilate all White Lodge practitioners, the witches, those who did not have traditional belief systems of the church. But at this time, they were infiltrating the church by the thousands, as this continued for a couple of thousand years. So they started their perverse acts based not on Christianity's beliefs, but on those running Christianity that decided to get rid of their competition and to torture anyone who had any occult practices or was doing any occult. They wanted to wipe out the complete White Lodge and occultism in general, like most dictatorships have done. They've outlawed occult practices. People want to talk about the occult practices of Nazi Germany, and that they were so occult-based, but all occultism was outlawed, and those who were found to be involved in it were all thrown in concentration camps, except for a very few that worked under Himmler for certain. But even that, most occultism was highly frowned upon. There wasn't really occult rituals done. There were ceremonials of an ancient evil nature done. And there's a big difference between practical magic and evil ceremonies that were practiced. So this is again how once Satan got a hold of things, it killed and murdered by the thousands and hundreds of thousands occultists, which is what he wanted to do. Another reason for people not to be following black magic or satanic practitioners is because he's against the practice of magic. I mean, the next step that happened in the satanic belief systems, or Satan in general, after these time of huge church corruption, pretty much led by Satan to generate followers. But what actually happened as society calmed down and things got more civilized, in the early 1800s and so forth, it became a time of mocking Satan. Well, he was a joke. It's not really didn't do anything. People started to really accept the fact that Satan was not necessarily the causer of all problems, that it was the weak humans. And that one of the best ways to keep Satan out of your life was to mock him. And this in itself went on for quite a period of time, and the whole belief in Satan and the blaming of Satan stopped for a period of time, even some could say a few hundred years, until society fell down again, caused by the evilness of man's weakness, with the assistance of some evil energy, which you can call Satan if you want to, but mankind welcomes these kind of things. World War I, World War II's, the times of mass destruction and mass murder, mankind started to doubt the positive rhetoric of the church, which is infested with the evil practitioners, and the hypocritical factor of the churches and all religions for that matter, which basically are nothing more than left-hand path Satanists' filters anyway. All religion is. And we covered that in the right-hand, left-hand path lecture in depth. But now people are starting to actually turn the other way. Well, if these people say that they're good and they have no control over it and everything's being ran by Satan, well, we should then pray to Satan. So Satan has created his own worshipers like he wanted from the beginning, and this is the new birth, aided by Hollywood, who's portrayed, particularly in the, it started in the late 60s, went through the 70s and 80s, where we got all these horror movies from the images of Satan in Friday the 13th, etc., that these are supposed to be some sort of satanic or evil beings and they cannot be stopped, to all the horror movies like The Exorcist, who portrayed Satan as this very powerful being. Well, if that's that powerful, then we should use that energy, is how it started to become the satanic cult phase that we start seeing starting in popular culture in the 1960s. Of course, there's always been satanic cults. People have prayed to the dark side to get what they want and worship the dark side. But worship in general certainly is not the individual path that a lot of Satanists claim that they have and desire. Neither is sacrificing or anything. You're being told what to do and having to follow structures. So it's really a messed up, confused factor, but this is how information works. Disinformation works in the physical reality of what's going on, and how these things get distorted by movies and images and turn into these virtually comic characters that are in these satanic cults now. And then we get into this particular, in the last 10 to 15 years, the strong move in occultism and push by the Black Lodge, who's taken over occultism, to this black magic practices. And we have all these New Age, born-again black magicians who are nothing more than Satanists, but are trying to wash it a little bit so that they can come out as, well, we're just strong individuals and we're not slaves. And of course, Satanists have always said this. I had someone tell me, well, Satanism is a strong path. Strong path of what? Sex and money? Power? I mean, that's not very new. And there's certainly nothing overly strong about it. It's just base realities. And the fact is that Satan has lost. And even in society, the only reason why anyone is operating illegally or profiting from satanic or evil activities is not because there's laws against all of it. They're not enforced. It's all based on corruption. And that's man's problem. Whether a evil energy suggested you do that or not, mankind has decided to be corrupt. They've decided to be bought off. And this is what causes all the problems. The basic propaganda by those in control, the Black Lodge who run things, is that, we're working hard. We're going to have a war against drugs, and we've got all these police agencies. Yeah, the problem is they all work for the Black Lodge. They're not enforcing any laws. They're not grabbing any people. Every law enforcement knows of every illegal act that goes on, period. Anything that happens is because law enforcement is corrupt and not enforcing the law, period. The laws are there, and they're supposed to be followed. So it isn't the fact that Satan is won by saying it's okay to do this. They just ignore everything by everyone being bought off and the corruption involved in that. So it's come to the point that everybody is so disillusioned and everybody's now been brainwashed that they got to have so many toys in life and that they only care about their own family. And it's all about me, myself, and I. And as long as you're alive, it really doesn't matter if you're a slave, apparently, because that's what all people really are. They live in a corrupt, horrible society, and they're more than happy to take money from organized crime because the government is so evil they can't tell the difference. Well, this is true, but it's true because of the fact that you allow government to do that. And the government is corrupt, not because of the fact that there aren't laws against that. Things are rigged because people allow it to happen and they allow themselves to be bought off in massive, massive numbers. That doesn't mean that that in any way this is directly because of satanic empowerment. It isn't. And there just is no additional power in the black path whatsoever. Matter of fact, it's very limiting and very dangerous ultimately because the powers to be will take more from you than they ever give you. But it's sexy. And, you know, Satanism has always been portrayed as sexy. That's one thing that the largest fan of Satanism pushed, the Church of Satan, in the late 60s. It was a whole sexy path. You know, there was nudity, there was sex, and who doesn't want sex, and who doesn't want money, and who doesn't want power? And that's what it's all about. It's very primitive, but it's certainly, to a large group of people, they'd much prefer to go to a ritual that involves naked women laying on altars than going to a church and listening to a sermon. But, you know, it's all base level, low class, moronic belief system. But ultimately, it's the corruption of mankind, not the belief in some demon who's going to empower you, because that doesn't seem to be the case. While there's been a slow takeover of the world by the Black Lodge that runs things, pretty much all those maniac psychos who tried to take over the world from the beginning of time up until the modern age have been crushed. And they've decided, since they can't win the bigger battle, they do it by subverting people and through corruption on a mass level, which works very well. So following a black magic tradition is not powerful. It's not going to get you any place, no matter what these little New Age people preach and pretty much lie constantly in their little books and other things saying how great this is. The bottom line is that none of these people, from Aleister Crowley on up to the Church of Satan to the Temple of Set, all these people, when you look at them, are mostly horrible failures. And if they are prospering at any level whatsoever, it's on a very base level. And what people are doing behind the scenes and other things, but is unknown, just like there's positive psychics who've made millions. But the bottom line is that magic is neutral, and you can use it in a negative or positive fashion. But none of these throughout history, the people who have quoted to be, you know, the evilest man in the world, Crowley, I mean, he was a total, complete failure on every level. The Church of Satan was a complete failure, never really achieved anything. And you go through each and every one of these people, that's what they're all failures. And the modern people who are making money and running black lodges are making money off of selling you a dream that ain't ever gonna happen. They're not using that power to go out and make money and dominate the world and have all the physical things and the beautiful women that you would think that this Satanism would be, that Satanists would have around them, would have a Hugh Hefner style, mansions, beautiful girls, fast cars, all the things that generally modern society considers positive anyway. Funny that none of these people have those things. And then they rationalize saying, well, I can have it, I'm just not interested in it. When they cry about past relationships, drive old cars, and live in apartments. Well, that ain't much of a power. So you've got to look at what something manifests. Religion has manifest hatred and killing, and it's part of Satan's plan. Look at it, what has it done? Sure, some has helped in some areas, but as a general thought form, it is negative and evil and caused nothing but wars, as we see from time, feeding this evil negativity that pushes people into corners where making the choice to do something evil is very easy because they don't have much else to turn to. Um, so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy as things get worse and worse and you have negative people who conveniently like to use the guise of Satan to entrap their followers. But ultimately, it's just all about just plain ass criminal evil. And the empowerments that they claim they get from evil entities is more a fiction than anything else. There certainly is no mass proof that their energies have done anything to manifest without the strong arm of trillions of dollars in corruption paid all over the world, followed up by lots and lots of guns to make sure that you cooperate or die. Take the silver or take the lead. So with that, I'll leave you. And in general, believe nothing and question everything.